The following program is made possible by Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Gavin Newsom bears his soul and goes into what he describes as rehab. How will this affect his future? And meanwhile, it seems the future is now in the presidential campaign.
Is the San Francisco mayor dismantling his own career? And which Democrat is ahead right now in the presidential sweepstakes? Veteran Democratic insider Donnie Fowler is here. The game is politics, and the game is on.
I'm Bob Marks.
And I'm Mark Simon. Welcome to the game. It's all about politics, our favorite topic, and we're joined by one of our favorite friends, Donnie Fowler, longtime veteran Democratic strategist. Doesn't look old enough to be a long-time one, but believe me, is born and raised in the business. Worked for Wes Clark, worked for John Kerry in the last round, and so far has managed to stay out of the fray. Before we get to the presidential stuff, though, we got to talk about the story of the week, if not the month, not the year in San Francisco, which is Gavin Newsom first acknowledging he had an affair with the wife of campaign manager and apparently one of his closest friends, and then a few days later announces that he has a drinking problem. He's going into what he described as rehab at Delancey Street. What do you make of the latest development? Was this As the Gavin Turns or The Edge of Gavin? I mean, it's almost a San Francisco soap opera.
It's definitely a soap opera. The most important thing is there's a lot of human pain in this, and not just with Gavin Newsom, but with Alex Turk and his wife, Ruby. You know, your heart just almost hurts when you think about it. The problem is that Gavin's a public figure, that these are not only close friends of his, but people that worked for him, and so it becomes a public issue. Normally it's not something that probably should rise to the front page of the Chronicle, but so for Gavin, he's got a really difficult task ahead, and fortunately San Francisco is more forgiving than a lot of parts of the country about personal indiscretions. So the politics of this depends a lot on really what Gavin's opponents want to do to him.
Yeah, people seem to forget that these are real people,
yeah,
and this is real things that are happening to them. But and you get a lot of sense that some people look at it very cynically and think it's all manufactured and calculated in the background by political people. How much of this do you think the response to it was calculated, and how well did they do?
Well, it's certainly, being a public figure, you have to think about how you respond to both the good things and the bad things, in this case bad. So how did Gavin, from a tactical point of view, respond to this? Pretty well. Machiavelli had a saying that if you have bad news for the people, get it out all at once. And if you have good news, spread it out over time. Most politicians do it in reverse. They want to tell you everything great at the beginning, and they want to hide, secret away the bad stuff. The mayor did as well a job tactically as you could expect. You know, they realized that this problem was going to become public, and Gavin and his staff just said, we're going to get this all out at once. He did a Come to Jesus press conference, and a day and a half, 2 days later, decided he's going to try to deal with what he calls an alcohol problem. So from a tactical point of view, they have done so far a very nice job.
You know, another person you used to work for, a fellow by the name of Bill Clinton,
yes,
perhaps didn't do as good a job responding to this kind of situation. How much of it is the individual basically saying, you know, continuing to deny it? How much of it is, you know, the individual versus the strategists and the people that are around him?
Well, on the one hand, Gavin denied it for a year and a half, because the relationship happened a while ago. It didn't just happen. It came public only when Alex Turk, the campaign manager, found out about it. So in that sense, they did try to hide it, but once it was obvious, they let it out. Bill Clinton was the exact opposite example. It is the exact example of what you do not do. And a lot of other politicians, Republican and Democrat, have done this. If you remember, there was going to be a Speaker of the House to replace Newt Gingrich, a guy named Livingston from Louisiana. He had the same kind of personal issues that Bill Clinton did, and it destroyed his career. So these problems, Bill Clinton did it the worst you could possibly do it, dragging it out, denying it, trying to finesse it. The famous, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, whatever sexual relations meant to him was clearly not what it meant to the rest of the people. Gavin Newsom did as best as you could possibly do in a terrible personal situation.
It's an odd city. I mean, you said it's a forgiving city, and there's no question that's the case. It didn't seem to bother anybody when Willie Brown was mayor.
Yeah.
He fathers a child with another woman while he's still married. I actually wrote in a column once, I described him as a serial adulterer because he'd been married for a long time but really hadn't been behaving as though he was. And it didn't seem to bother anybody. How much of that is because of the expectations people had, and how much it is the reaction? Because I was really struck by the reaction of the supervisors, and some of whom are his political enemies, who were very, very unforgiving in terms of what they said, and thought, wow, that was really overstepping in some ways what would, I think, is fair to describe as a personal issue.
What struck me was the hesitation that some of the public officials, some of the politicians on the Board of Supervisors, until Jake McGoldrick said just yesterday or the day before that the mayor should resign, even the Board of Supervisors and other elected officials who have opposed Newsom from the beginning were very careful not to publicly attack him. On the staff level, the mayor's staff level, you know, there is a sense of, clearly there's a sense of that they were misled, if not betrayed. At least that's what you read in the news and what you hear through the grapevine. But at the end of the day, you know, Gavin Newsom is a very talented politician, and he's a very talented public servant. And so this is an inevitable up and down. Most politicians are human. Not all of them, but most politicians are human, and they're guaranteed to make human mistakes. The question is, can the politician survive that mistake? And, you know, San Francisco is, as I said, it's a forgiving city. His most ardent political opponents have not publicly come out and really tried to tear him down yet. That's a good sign, I guess, for his political future. There's still no one who really seems to be a seriously strong challenger to his reelection in just 9 months. So it's if you look at it strategically, and you look at Gavin Newsom's talent level as a politician, things look okay. It's obviously not something he wishes didn't happen, but it could be a whole lot worse. It could be a whole lot worse for Gavin Newsom.
The media seems to be playing up this thing they call the man code. The idea that somebody would sleep with a good friend's wife, that's just something you don't do. And that, in fact, the media is kind of saying that, well, this is going to have huge impact with men voters and so forth. Is that real, or is that just something?
That women don't have a girls rule. I mean, I don't think, you know, the man code, girls rule, whatever you want to call it. I have no idea if it plays differently with men or women. That's nice and fun to speculate, but it's hard to really know for sure. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, Gavin Newsom needs one more vote than someone who runs against him, the next closest candidate to run against him. And like I said right now, who's going to do that? Who's going to step up? And it's unclear that even Matt Gonzalez, his opponent last time, is definitely going to get in the race. So, you know, bad situation, but man, could Gavin Newsom have been luckier in the political environment he's dealing with?
Yeah, there's no question that in terms of re-election to the mayoral seat, no one seems to be interested particularly in running against him. Yeah. That could be as much a manifestation as term limits as anything else, that people now are just in the habit of waiting for the incumbent to go away. Because I don't know any
politicians who don't see blood in the water and like to jump in. It may be true, but wow, especially in San Francisco, where he's got so much criticism from the left. Yeah. But you know what Gavin's doing is he's going out there, even in the last few days, and he's pushing his health care plan, he's pushing environmental initiatives. I mean, he's trying to at least do the business of the mayor.
He's looking like he's on the job.
He's trying to.
The other question, though, is long term, because there was talk about him running statewide, running for governor, he and Villaraigosa from L.A. How badly does this potentially hurt him statewide? I would think the state reacts differently than San Francisco. The world reacts differently than San Francisco.
Well, San Francisco's not just a little out of touch politically with the rest of the country, it's a little out of touch politically with the state of California. You know, what's funny is I've heard that Mayor Villaraigosa himself is having some marital issues, but it seems to be sort of swept under the rug because this is a more glamorous, scandal in San Francisco.
Well, Newsom is a glamorous figure.
He is very glamorous.
And that probably has an element of it.
Villaraigosa is too. Let's not take anything away.
Yeah,
He's a beautiful man.
If you say so.
What this does for Newsom's future is, it certainly is a mark against him. You know, whether he recovers depends first on whether he can get reelected, and second on how he does in the next 1 year or the next 5 years as mayor.
And that's
he can overcome this in the long term, but it is a serious mark against him.
Well, that's the other political problem he's got above and beyond this particular scandal, is that it's difficult because San Francisco is a difficult town to run. The Board of Supervisors is a difficult legislative body to manage. There really isn't much he can point to as a signature moment, legislatively or achievement-wise, in his city, unless he wants to point to the 49ers leaving, which I suspect is not something he wants to put on his resume. So is that going to hurt him as much, if not more?
I'm sure that Newsom, the mayor, would disagree that he's produced nothing legislatively. I don't work for the mayor, and I don't work against the mayor, so I don't have a dog in that fight. But you know, gay marriage is obviously a signature issue that he took a lot of heat from and expended a lot of political capital, even in a city that's generally pro-gay rights. He has tried to solve some of the health care problem. He has expanded, or at least been mayor while the Muni has expanded, although there are some problems with the Muni operations. So, and it's hard to say that San Francisco is really in a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. You know, if you live there every day like I do, just as a citizen, it's really hard to say, well, San Francisco's a mess, the way you might say Detroit's really hurting, you know, or the way you might say Newark is really struggling. And so it's not like things are going really badly in San Francisco. The crime rate's up a little, and that's not a good thing, but things aren't just falling apart at the seams, even though Gavin Newsom's personal life is falling apart at the seams.
Donnie, stay with us. We're going to be right back and continue our discussion. We'll talk a little bit about the upcoming presidential race. Stay tuned.
Since the dawn of civilization, humans have sought knowledge and wisdom. The quest to answer the mystery of life has carried on for thousands of years.
But you can learn all the answers easily. Just watch these amazing high school students on Bay Area Quiz Kids. Each week, 2 teams from across the Bay Area compete for an incredible grand prize. Watch Bay Area Quiz Kids each Saturday at 2 p.m. on KRON.
Whenever there's new innovations or revolutionary technologies, chances are they've got something to do with the Silicon Valley. And that is what Tech Close-Up is all about.
Tech Close-Up is about even more than just bytes and chips. We cover the people in your community. We're all over the Bay Area. To find Tech Close-Up where you live, just go to our website at techcloseup.com.
Okay. All right, that's enough. All right. I've got enough. Come on! Oh, you gotta be kidding me! What the heck? Man!
We're back to the game. I'm Mark Simon. Bob Marks over here. And over here, Donnie Fowler, veteran Democratic strategist, has no dog in any fight these days. Happy to be there. No dog in the presidential campaign, which we're going to talk about in a second. But before we leave the Newsom issue, I just want to know what you thought of the media coverage of it. I was really struck by first of all, the sheer volume of the coverage, and especially in the Chronicle. But there was a photo in the Chronicle on the front page the day he announced he'd had the affair, and I saw all the cameras. And first of all, he looked like he was standing at the wrong end of a shooting gallery. But secondly, I was struck by just the sheer numbers of them, the kind of thing you used to see on the presidential trail and never saw at a local level. And I wondered if that's a part of this, if there's been too much media attention, if everything gets too much media attention nowadays, and you know, and the pack moves on very quickly, or what you make of all of this.
Well, Mark, you must be a good political operative. The first thing I did was count the number of TV cameras in that photograph. And I thought, there's not 10 TV stations in San Francisco. It is salacious. It sells newspapers. It gets people to watch the local news. So it's a lot of fun to talk about, although it's miserable for the people involved. It's fun to talk about in the sort of the same way that Hollywood gossip is fun to talk about. Has there been too much media coverage? I'm not somebody who says that we should be making a decision on what the media covers or not. I mean, there's the First Amendment, and the media can cover what they want to cover.
You know, that kind of high-flown principle really doesn't belong on this show.
I'm sorry. I'll take it back. It's salacious, which is the bad side of what I said. But, you know, is it too much coverage? I don't know. You know, if people want to see it and people want to buy the newspapers and watch it on TV, then that's maybe what they want to see.
Yeah. Let's talk a little.
I don't think it's been unfair, and I don't think it's been. The media coverage of the Mayor Newsom has not been mean-spirited
or outrageous
or inflammatory. But it has created a huge amount of interest. I don't know that that's a problem in a democracy.
Let's talk presidential politics, something that probably is a little more fun. I don't know.
Democracy?
Well, it's a democracy in action. God bless us all, and God save the United States.
Keep your hand on your checkbook.
Yeah. There seems to be an incredible amount of activity for something that's a year or more than a year away. Why is it so busy so early this time?
Well, let's go right back to the media. The media, particularly the political press, is a little bored. The three of us are. That's why we're talking about it 11 months before the first vote is cast in Iowa next January. There's also the main impetus. There's two main reasons this election has started so early. One is Barack Obama's rise as a superstar. Is it a long-standing superstar? Will he still be there in a year? Or is it a flash in the pan? We don't know. History is not on his side, but he appears to be a very different kind of politician. The second reason that we've started so early is the chase for money. The chase for money actually always starts January after the congressional midterms. But when you add in Barack Obama's star status and Hillary Clinton's star status, you add in the political press corps is getting kind of bored already, then you really have a recipe for a huge amount of coverage about something that's usually under the radar this early, which is the fundraising.
What about the dynamic of, you know, some say this is the most wide-open race since 1928. We don't have an incumbent vice president running, don't have an incumbent president. Plus, we have a president that virtually couldn't be any lower in the polls. How much do those things play into the focus turning to what's ahead?
Well, it is a wide-open race for the general election. It hinges very much on the Iraq War. We don't know what's going to be happening in Iraq in 21 months when we have the general election for president. So in that sense, it's wide open. The Republicans have a real challenge, and you see them maneuvering. Do we stand with Bush, John McCain, or do we criticize Bush, Senator Chuck Hagel from Nebraska, or the senator from Kansas, who's also running? They're really playing a very dangerous, calculating game, and not knowing which side they're going to come down when we get to the real issues on the war next year. The Democrats had this problem 4 years ago. Do we vote for the war, or do we vote against the war? War power. And all of them calculated to vote for the war powers. Now, John Edwards on the Democratic side says, well, I didn't mean to do it. Barack Obama says, well, I wouldn't have done it. Well, that's easy to say. And Senator Clinton says, I wouldn't have done it the same way. So you see the Democrats, too, are struggling. It's very hard to predict where the war is going to be, so it's really hard to say anything other than it is a very wide-open race right now.
With Senator Clinton, I mean, you've been involved in Democratic politics for a long time, and you know how the process works, even though it changes the primary process. How solidly does she have a grip on kind of the primary process, those donors out there, those key endorsements? I mean, how much of a grip does she, and with the help of her husband, do they have going into this?
Well, you said a long time. It's actually 20 years ago this year was the first time I worked on a presidential campaign. But Senator Clinton and her husband have a powerful, powerful institutional advantage. You could say Clinton has the muscle and Obama has the magic. she has obviously a huge Rolodex. They call it a database now, but all it is a Rolodex. And she has a huge number of relationships, as does he, that they can call in and say, do you remember when 10 years ago? Do you remember when 20 years ago? And they have a group of people running and managing that campaign that have been through this, are fighters. They've been tested. And they know what they're doing. The only real question is, do they run a campaign thinking it's still 1992? Or do they run a campaign recognizing that it's a 2008 cycle? And that's something we're going to find out.
What does that mean?
Well, the electorate's changed dramatically. First of all, just take Latino voters as an example. A dramatically higher percentage of the electorate. Take what the battleground states are now compared to 1992. It's a different mix of battleground states. And take the very fact of the way media is done today. You know, in 1992, fax machines were the new technology. You know, now it's YouTube and mobile politics. So it's that's a danger if you have if you still think that it's like it was in 1992, but it's really 2008.
Yeah, because of the technology, there's really no uncovered moment. I mean, there is no moment where you can have a quiet conversation with someone that isn't potentially on camera. I assume these people are all aware of this and they're adjusting their behavior accordingly, but it is an astonishing fact about this, that it's not just started early, but the scrutiny is now constant. There isn't any downtime.
The Clinton people invented rapid response, which was instantaneous political reaction to what your opponent's saying or what the media is saying. So at least they understand it, rapid response through the fax machine, and I think that they're smart enough to know how to hire the right people and adjust to the new environment.
Now, you mentioned off the air, I think it was, that a lot of what's happening now isn't relevant. And I think that's something we all thought we all share, which is that there's a hell of a lot going on for something that's a hell of a long time from now. And that a lot can happen, as we all know, you know, a week is an eternity in politics. What are the downsides of having all this attention? Is there the risk that the electorate's going to get bored with it? Is there the risk that someone who should maybe be the nominee trips and falls so early that they don't become the nominee?
I don't know that there's a risk for the process going bad. There is a risk that voters just get tired of it, voter fatigue. The challenge that these candidates on the Republican and Democratic side have to face is the very long, arduous marathon. And if you pay attention to every little up and down every day in the presidential campaign, you'll just get burned out and you won't be able to react. So that when the elections start happening next January, you'll be so tired and so exhausted, and you'll have nuanced everything so much that you kind of you lose touch with who you are and why you're running. The danger in an election this long is the candidates get so caught up in the nuance they forget the basic principles of why they're running and what they stand for.
So we saw that with John Kerry, really.
Yeah. You know, what about the dynamic of the future versus the past? It seems like we're in an environment where people are really craving to talk about the future. That seems to set up well for Obama and could be a problem for Clinton. How's that going to play out?
Well, you just described on the Democratic side the real fight here. Senator Clinton is saying that this is a time when we need someone who has been through this, who has experience, who has stature, who can walk in ready to do the job on day one. Other people, particularly Obama, are setting the theme up as, aren't you tired of the same old politics and partisanship? And by the way, do you realize that there's been a Clinton or a Bush on the national ticket every single year since 1980? There's no dynasties in politics. So there is thematically, and this isn't just particular to Clinton and Obama, but they're the best examples of it. There is a strong thematic difference developing between we need, in this time where the Iraq war is a mess, where the U.S. Economy is really good at the top on Wall Street, but not so good on Main Street, we need somebody with experience and who's been around the block and who can get things done, versus we really need a change. We really got to try politics anyway because it just ain't working.
Let me ask you
on that note, I've got to stop you there. Donnie, thanks for joining us. I'm sure we'll have you back. It's fascinating stuff. Mark and I will be right back and have some final thoughts. Stay with us.
It's It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Since the dawn of civilization, humans have sought knowledge and wisdom. The quest to answer the mystery of life is carried on for thousands of years.
But you can learn all the answers easily. Just watch these amazing high school students on Bay Area Quiz Kids. Each week, 2 teams from across the Bay Area compete for an incredible grand prize. Watch Bay Area Quiz Kids each Saturday at 2 p.m. on KRON.
If you live on the peninsula, there's only one place to get the latest news on business, sports, politics, education, and your community. Peninsula TV, Channel 26, the Peninsula and South Bay's Emmy Award-winning programming resource. For more information or for a programming schedule, go to pentv.tv or call us at 650-637-1936. Peninsula TV, your community programming channel.
Welcome back to the game. I want to take a few minutes as we're taping this show. The funeral's going on in San Francisco for Leo McCarthy, former Speaker of the House, State Assembly, former Lieutenant Governor, longtime San Francisco politician. And I knew him, I covered him, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about him. I don't know how well you knew him, but he was something you don't see very much anymore, which was a fundamentally decent, honest man who was in politics for reasons of ideology and reasons of belief. You know, it was a classic liberal in the sense of we used to use that word in the 60s and 70s when somebody was a liberal because they believed government could be an instrument to help people and to do things for people. Terrific politician, knew how to run, knew how to infight, wasn't afraid to get into a fight and wasn't afraid to win them. But he wasn't dirty. He wasn't, it wasn't personal for him. It was all about power and all about who gets to exercise it and who gets to exercise it for what they believe in. And really, there aren't a lot of those people around
there
anymore.
aren't. You know, the other thing that struck me about him is everybody that you know and I know that are in politics today, nearly everybody at one time or another worked for Leo McCarthy. Yeah. He's one of those people that had an impact on a whole generation of people involved in politics.
Yeah, he really was somebody, a mentor to a huge number of people and an example to a lot of people, and it would be nice to see the politics get back to Leo McCarthy-style politics. Yeah. That's all we have time for now.
I'm Bob Marks.
And I'm Mark Simon. Thanks for being with us, and join us next time on The Game.